Planning team that helps business owners earn more and keep more.
3, 2, 1. Your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. 4 locations now. Downtown Jackson, new location, Gluckstadt, Madison County. Tupelo in Atlanta. Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools, the leading fastener distributor in the Southeast. acebolt.net, Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. LSU put on a clinic Saturday night with a freshman QB. This dude, he looked 6'6", 245 pounds from Ponchatoula. We want to welcome in LSU insider Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Mike, how about A.J. Finley in his debut? TJ, sorry.
He was impressive. I'm sort of getting old in this business because people have asked me, who you compare him to? And, I saw him in high school. He got coached by a good friend of mine, Hank Turney, who was a long-time coach, high school coach here. Hank was a run-oriented coach. Well, sure how good TJ was, he sort of flipped the script. He become a passing team with TJ. And so you can tell he's very poised. He showed a lot of comfort in the pocket. He was a good decision maker, which I think equates to accuracy out on the field. And so he reminds me, as when I was growing up, they had a block on Sunday mornings during the football season where you could watch Grambling highlights, Notre Dame highlights. It was Tulane on WDSU Channel 6 in New Orleans. And he reminds me so much of a young Doug Williams. He's bigger than Doug, and Doug's no small guy, but it's his motion. The ball comes out by the ear. He's got a rifle like a bazooka. That ball's coming out of there, and it's fast. And just his motion, his setup, his delivery is very similar to watching Doug when he was at Grambling. Even though, Coach Rob ran the wing T offense, he did a lot of things with Doug out on the move to throw the football, and it's similar. It's got a lot of similar traits to the setup and delivery when Doug came out. Jamarcus, people have, just because of the size, but Jamarcus was a big, elongated delivery. It came from way far back, almost like a pitcher when it would come out of there. He's got better movement skills, certainly, than Jamarcus did. But it was impressive in week one. He was well prepared. And so, I give Steve Ensminger and also Russ Callaway, who they brought in to kind of help mentor the quarterbacks here. And they had a couple guys that were interesting names in that mix when Coach O selected Russ. But they liked that mixture of Steve and Russ to work with the young quarterbacks. And TJ, it was neck and neck with him and Max Johnson. And Max got to play a little bit late in the game. They didn't let him throw the ball, but basically they just sort of let him run it out. And you saw some running skills from Max that's pretty impressive. But, and Ed was ready for it. He knew as soon as the game was over with, quarterback, man, what's going to happen? And he made it pretty clear after the game and again yesterday that if Miles is healthy, Miles Brennan is the starter on this team. But he emphasized if he's healthy. And I'm going to tell you this, yesterday Miles practiced a little bit. He didn't practice, so, he's looking at that being 100% before Miles can get back on the field. I expect TJ Finley's going to start Sunday, unless Max, they dip him at Lord's and he comes back. And I think if he plays, it'll be off the bench, so to speak. I think he'll come off if that's the case. But Max was sort of gingerly throwing it before the game, but that torn abdominal muscle, man, listen, and that's a rare sports injury. You don't see that much. in sports. You see it in a car wreck, but you don't see a lot of it in sports, is a 2 to 3 week injury. And 3 weeks would take it to Saturday. So, I think they're going to be very cautious with Miles, and I suspect you're going to see a lot of TJ, if not TJ starting Saturday when they play Auburn.
Interesting. Mike Detillier, LSU insider, on the Miller Lite guest line talking LSU, and they had a big win over South Carolina, and TJ Finley looked great. This Russ Callaway, I just read up on him. He spent several seasons at Samford, and they had a heck of an offense, and then also a year with Nick Saban. So Ogeron thinks he may be the next kind of boy wonder offensive guru type guy?
You took the words right out of his mouth. That's very similar to what he told me this offseason when they hired him. Because I knew a couple of the other guys that had applied for the job and had actually spoke to Ed about it. And there were bigger names than Russ Callaway, put it to you that way. And he just liked the way Russ had run the offense at Samford and his knowledge of the game, his workability with Steve, and how that, kind of hand in hand. And just remember last year, he basically is taking the place of George Munoz, who's at Baylor right now, working, with Dave Aranda. Because George was the guy kind of behind the scenes who worked with Joe Burrow exclusively. And so Joe Brady gets a lot of ink, and he deserves it. The offense he helped piece together with the receiving corps, because Joe really worked more with the receivers than, say, did with Joe. It was actually George that worked a lot with Joe behind the scenes, and that's the position that Russ Callaway has today. And so it was a very good game plan pieced together by Steve and Russ to get this working with a freshman quarterback. But he was so poised, and I knew going up against South Carolina, Muschamp was going to show him a lot of different looks, and how well he would respond to that. Because, come on, you're not at Ponchatoula, you're not seeing those looks, so to speak. But he's a midterm grad, same as Max Johnson, came in, spent time with Joe Brady and also with Joe Burrow, going through things for the national championship game. And I think it really helped both young quarterbacks out. But it was an excellent game plan, and LSU ran the football. I thought that was the key. They ran the football much better than they had in previous games. Their offensive line played much better. Their defense is still lousy, but their offensive line play was, I think, really good. And they controlled the tempo of that game by running it. And also TJ was, as Ed said, he was on fire.
Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. Do you think Pelini's one and done?
I'm still not real sure about that. With Bo, I think he's Ed's handpicked man. And in a pandemic where money's tight, for coaches, especially when you're paying them over $2 million a year, he's going to give Bo every opportunity to make this work. I'm just telling you. I know the way Ed's thinking about this. They get along well. It's not a situation like he had with Matt Canada in year one where they didn't get along personally. He gets along really well with Bo, and it has not clicked yet. And so we'll see how this all works out with Pelini, and because that contract he's got is a pretty hefty one at LSU, but basically defensive coordinators under siege. It's not just Bo.
That's true.
In that boat, everybody's getting it, Jack. So it's I think Ed will give him every opportunity to extend this, and I think he hopes to see improvement. And it was, I'll use the term better against South Carolina, but man, but it wasn't good. You still had wide open receivers. Their ability to turn the corner on this defense, and goes to show how much they really miss Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen at linebacker, who really did a good job in run support last year. And you see defensive ends and linebackers out of position and teams being able to turn the corner. In the secondary, it's a situation where, come on, the defensive back got to turn his head around. You know, he's playing with his back to the ball. And you would think that that's easily teachable, but apparently not. You're giving up way too many big plays for LSU, and I think that's a concern for Ed. And all minds have been on that particular part. So it's just not about scheme and Pelini. It's also about a lot of new personnel. And what I always think about is shared experiences. And I think for a group, you got to kind of go through that. And the group last year had been through that difficult loss to Troy a couple years ago, and had been through an Alabama whipping, a couple of Alabama whippings. And I think that when you don't have that experience together, it shows that, hey, man, we are five-star recruits. We're going to get it done. Yeah, that's not necessarily the case. You did a lot of one-on-one freelancing. Now this is a total team game, and you're playing in the SEC. You got to play as a unit and understand and learn your responsibilities. So I do think it's something that hopefully will get better, but it's just not Bo. I think a lot of it has been pointed toward him, but the same people doing that were screaming and hollering a year ago about Dave Aranda, that he was playing too soft in coverage and giving up a lot of stuff underneath. Now, they weren't giving up as many big plays, but teams were dink and dunking them to death, and they were giving up a lot of that. And then Ole Miss game came, and Plumlee went wild on them running the football. But after that game, everything started to click defensively. They played much better after that Ole Miss game. So we'll see what happens with Bo and his defense. But a lot of pressure certainly on him to get this changed, because I do think coaching is teaching. And right now, they seem to be lost a lot of times in crucial situations and giving up a ton of big plays and can't get off the field on third down. But you know what? I could say that about a lot of teams in college football today. It's just that it's LSU, the defending national champs.
Sure. When it comes to LSU, it's interesting right now. There's really two teams / three teams with big-time wide receiver talent: Bama, LSU, and then Ole Miss has some. Florida's getting there, but I think it's interesting that Georgia doesn't have it. Outside of Seth Williams, Auburn doesn't have it, A&M doesn't have it, and Tennessee doesn't have it. What's your takeaway on that, Mike?
Come recruiting Louisiana. I just did the numbers. In the last 5 years, there have been 67 Division I receivers come out of this state.
Good grief.
67 who have signed Division I scholarships out of the state of Louisiana. As much as LSU proclaims itself to be DBU and everything else, really, Louisiana is a wide receiver state.
Yes.
I mean, they got them coming out. And I told this to Archie a couple of years ago, and he was asking, man, Mike, every time I put on TV, they got some damn receiver from Louisiana, making a play here and there. And I was like, you know what? You ought to whisper that into the ear of the Ole Miss people. They got him here. You got to start recruiting this state for receivers. And he just started to laugh. He said, well, that might not be a bad idea. But there's a lot of talent in the state of Louisiana, and Ed has kind of stuck out the tentacles to go to Texas, to go to Mississippi for some of the top wideouts. And, not only is he getting it here, he's getting it outside the state too. And I do think Joe Burrow has been the catalyst to that. I really think the same way that Tua became the catalyst for receivers going to Alabama. I'm convinced of that. Texas A&M had them for a while. A lot of them left early, and then you had a couple of them opt out this year. But they had a lot of talent at the wide receiver position. But it's because of the talent in the state of Louisiana. I'm going to say this year I think Louisiana probably will have 9 and a possible 10th receiver that will sign Division I scholarship in the 2021 class. That's how much talent that wide receiver's here. So, man, if I'm Ole Miss or Mississippi State, my thing is I'm pitching a tent here to get those guys. And some of them have went to Louisiana Tech and kind of elsewhere. Nicholls State's got a young man that is going to play at the next level, and he wasn't heavily recruited. So my thing about it is you got to know where the talent is. And I think it's because a lot of in-state talent, but also to their ability to reach outside the state to get people like an Eric Gilbert, who's really a wide receiver playing tight end for them. And you think about what they have now in Terrace Marshall, who's from North Louisiana, Racing McMath, who's from the New Orleans area. John Trey Kirkland is from my neck of the woods. And they got a ton of receivers. And then you got Keishon Butte, who's from Southwest Louisiana, Coy Moore, who is from the New Orleans area. Just think about that. All those guys basically from the state of Louisiana. So, you got to come get them because there are a number of them here. And I see more and more Florida State, which had recruited this state heavily at one time, and then it sort of backed off, is now recruiting this state quite a bit. And a lot of it having to do with the wide receivers and DBs.
Unbelievable. 67 wide receivers. Since when, Mike?
In 5 years.
Golly.
And that's not counting guys that went to, say,
Lafayette and stuff?
Yeah, no, that's counting the Lafayette guys.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm talking about like Southeast Louisiana, Nicholls State, something like that.
Right.
Grambling, Southern. It's unbelievable the amount of talent here, and it's become the glamour position. 7-on-7 has changed that, and really wide receivers the glamour spot. And so a lot of these young men, you go to these camps and you see all these 6'3", 6'4" guys. You walk up to them, you play some defense. Oh, no, sir, I play wide receiver. Oh, I'm a flex tight end. Okay, you play any defense? No, sir, never played defense before. And it's like, okay, but LSU's got a couple commitments, and then they've offered at least 3 guys from in-state that have not decided yet on where to go. And so they've offered 3 in-state kids that have not made a decision yet. So I'm just telling you, it's wide receiver loaded. And that's where, if I'm Lane or if I'm Mike Leach, whatever, man, I'm here. And Memphis is also, along with Florida State, becoming more and more of a player for what I would say the B players. But a lot of those B players have turned out to be really good.
I was about to say, you give them a couple of years more development. Some of them are just as good as the dudes that were 4 or 5 stars coming out. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans on the Miller Lite guest line. All right, we'll stay right there. We'll wrap it up with this. Arch Manning, big game a couple of weeks ago. What's the latest? What can you tell us?
No, he's playing well. Got a lot of spotlight on him. He's got a lot of talent around him, too. They've got a young receiver there, too, and A.J. Johnson, who's tremendously talented. He's for the 2022 class, and so I know LSU and Oklahoma, a couple other bigger schools have already offered. So, with Arch, I don't think you're going to hear much about recruiting until probably next spring with him. I've said this before in articles I've done with Ross Dallinger and others, that he's going to be the most highly recruited player ever from the state of Louisiana. I didn't think anybody could be recruited more than Fournette when Leonard came out. And that became an LSU-Alabama battle to the end. And Burton Burns, he's still screaming about that he lost him out. Burton's now with the Giants. But, Burton was the guy. He was a St. Aug guy, and he heavily recruited Leonard. And he thought he was going to Alabama. He had told me the day before he thought he was headed there. And then, but I always thought Leonard signed with LSU.
Then Peyton's recruitment, and
oh yeah, because
of the time,
Peyton, that was a different world.
Yeah,
different times, different world. It was a big story in Mississippi because Peyton didn't go to Ole Miss.
Yeah,
but it wasn't the national spotlight that Arch is going to get, where he's going to have everybody here. I mean, from Clemson and Dabo Swinney, who I know is close with the family. Oklahoma, I think, will certainly be involved. Why wouldn't they? I mean, everybody that goes there seems to play in the NFL, and he's become the quarterback whisperer. I know LSU has long been on Arch to get him, but in that class, there are 5 quarterbacks from the state of Louisiana who will sign Division I scholarships. 5. It just won't be Arch. They got 4 more right behind him that's going to get scholarship offers. It goes to show that at one time, Louisiana was known for the quarterbacks. They had Terry Bradshaw. They had Joe Ferguson, Burt Jones, Bobby, John Fourcade, Norris Weiss, who went to Ole Miss.
Oh, yeah.
Stan Humphreys, who went to Northeast Louisiana.
San Diego Chargers.
So, man, they were pumping them out. And Doug Williams also went to Zachary. So, all of a sudden, that dried up. But now you're starting to see it more and more that, man, Louisiana's back in the quarterback business, so to speak. But in that class with Arch, they're going to have 4 more that's going to sign Division I.
It's incredible.
Scholarships.
Mike, I got 1 minute. I want to segue real quick. What's the latest on Michael Thomas with the Saints?
He's battling a hamstring injury. He went to practice, and he pulled up, and they brought him inside real quickly. And so when you pull that hamstring. But all this trade rumor stuff, that's just Mike Florio. Come on. Mike has become the National Enquirer of the NFL. Any little tidbit, and maybe some of that, a little bit of an extent of that is true. That, Mike was upset. He got into a fight with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And maybe he did spout off to the coaches and everything else. But they Saints can't trade him. It would be a $20 million dead money cap hit. He's not going anywhere. Him and Sean will make that up. That'll be fine. But he is fighting the hamstring injury, and he will not play Sunday against the Bears.
Okay. There's the latest out of LSU and NOLA from our guy, Mike Detillier. Follow him on Twitter, at Mike Detillier. MikeDetillier.com. He's on Facebook. Mike, thank you, buddy. Be good.
Thank you, Bo.
We'll have to talk Dak Prescott to the Saints next week with Mike. I'm hoping Detillier can make that happen. I need him to facilitate that whole thing. And Dak Prescott representing the Houdat Nation next year and actually, playing under a Hall of Fame coach. The Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We are powered by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Hour number 3 coming up.